Hi, I'm Serena from thriftdiving.com, and today we are taking this old bench that I got from an estate sale and we are turning it into a new pretty bench with paint and fabric and arrow fastener tools. Stick with me because I'm going to show you how to do it. For this project, you'll need the Arrow Fastener T50X stapler, which they sent to me to use for this bench makeover. Thank you, Arrow Fastener. You'll also need a staple lifter, some pliers, and scissors. Don't forget your staples. You'll also need some really good fabric, and if you're painting your bench, use a good quality furniture paint. Now, I started this project years ago, and guess what? Like a lot of projects, it never got done. It literally sat in my basement for about 4 years, which is insane. So today we are taking some really good quality furniture paint, painting over this plasticky piece of faux wood and turning it into something great. To get started, I pulled off all the trim with the pliers. It was held on with hot glue, so it was very easy to pull off. And then I used my staple lifter and the pliers to pull off the fabric. You have to be very careful because some of these staples can prick your fingers, so just be very careful. And also, you don't want to damage the wood. Now, this was not real wood. It was actually MDF, so it was very dense, very hard to sometimes get out the staples. But with the pliers and the staple lifter, I was able to pull off all the old fabric. And I didn't want to throw this away. I wanted to use it to make new patterns with the new fabric. And as much as I love reupholstering furniture, I can tell you it can be very boring ripping out hundreds, sometimes thousands of staples. So get your tablet, set up your favorite shows, and get busy. So with the old pieces of fabric off, I was ready to use them as a template for the new pieces of fabric. I did measure them from side to side and lengthwise just to get a good idea of how wide I needed to make them. I generally add a little bit more just in case I mess up or maybe I mismeasured. The old saying is true, measure twice, cut once. I'm still learning that sometimes. So the next thing I did was repainted the legs of this bench. Now you see here that it's already painted, but again, that was nearly 3 to 4 years ago. And I thought that I was going to turn it into a bright white paint. So you can see here that I'm painting the first two a nice bright white, and then I'm thinking that doesn't match with the fabric. So I decided that I was going to stick with the old white, and that's what I did. So I went ahead, added some paint, smushed it into the little cracks and crevices there. And while the paint dried, I took the fabric and draped it over the bench, making sure that it was going to be wide enough for one solid piece. And thankfully, it was a perfect fit. I trimmed it so it would be wide enough to cover the entire top of the bench. And then I was ready to staple it with the Arrow Fastener stapler. Check the arrowfastener.com website to see which staple size best works for your project. But whatever size that you choose, they're really simple to load, and I found it very easy to use. So with the staples loaded, I was ready to get started. Now, I knew that I was going to trim off some of the fabric, but I tried to get as close to the base as possible. I was going to put some sort of trim there to cover up the staples, but I tried to get it as close to the bottom as possible. And I went along the entire bench just really quickly, but still trying to pull the fabric, make sure it was nice and taut, and just kept going. And when it was time to reload the staples, I could glance in that window and see, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of staples soon, so I could quickly reload. So using my scissors, very carefully, I went along the base of the bench and just trimmed away all the excess fabric. You see here at the corner, I just sort of twisted that in and just stapled it. And I used a hot glue gun to apply some bias tape. Now, this isn't what you would normally use bias tape for, but it's what I had on hand and kind of looked good with the black. And after I went along the entire bench, I thought it looked pretty good. I did get into trouble some spots where there was some glue on the fabric, but shh, nobody has to know. I'll admit that I was a little nervous to tackle the armrest, but I folded the fabric under, used the stapler to secure it to the bottom of each of the armrests, and then just worked my way through and folded the fabric under as I went and did my best to make sure that it was straight. Now, there were some places where I needed to curve the fabric right along the curved top of the armrest. So there were some parts that might have been a little wonky, but again, nobody has to know. We don't try to do perfect here at Thrift Diving. We just try to do it and do it well. And after everything was stapled, I was able to go around the back and staple it underneath, because this part, the armrest had 2 pieces of fabric. So this was the larger piece and it folded under. And then I could use my stapler in order to secure it. So you see here, I'm kind of confused. I'm not sure which direction to put my stapler, but I finally decided, you know what, we're just going to go in this way. And I put a series of staples there to hold it in place. So the next piece of fabric needed to go over top. And again, because it was such an awkward position, I couldn't get the stapler in there very well. And so I had to go in there in that same direction. And so when I went to flip it back over, I just had to be very careful that I didn't pull too hard. Otherwise, you could see the staples in that little groove. And when I folded it under, then I was able to fold in the sides, staple those, and then it was time for more hot glue and more trim. Be very careful when using glue guns. A lot of times when you're applying this trim to cover the staples, you're pressing the trim over the staples and the glue is very, very hot. So just be very careful. So the last step of this bench makeover was to put the legs back on. And after that, we were done. So we took this $25 bench from an estate sale and turned it into this pretty little bench that I am obviously excited about. And not just me, but my family was pretty excited about it too. And when they give me compliments, it actually means something, because sometimes they're not always that happy with what I create. Anyway, if you enjoyed this project, give it a thumbs up. Go back to thriftiving.com for more DIY, and be sure to head over to arrowfastener.com. Check out the T50X and all the other cool tools for your next upholstered project, and I will see you next project.